Jim realized he hadn't shared a story lately. Looking at Jim's hair being a train wreck today reminded me of a hair story. When Jim was working at a grocery store, Jim decided he would get him a mohawk. He looked through the employee handbook. The only statements on here was that it had to be off the collar and above the ears. A mohawk fit that. Jim showed up to work. Jim was called to the manager's office. Jim was told he had to go home because of his haircut. Jim was preparing to go home. Manager came back, said, "Don't go home yet. Keep working. We'll talk to you later." Oh, a couple of hours later, somebody from the franchise headquarters showed up, and they needed to talk to Jim. And they told Jim he needed to go home because of his haircut. So Jim got ready to go home again. And then, about 10 minutes later, they said, "Nope, don't go home yet. Keep working. We'll talk to you later." So at the end of the day, as Jim was getting ready to go home, after many phone calls were made to lawyers, I can imagine, Jim was told that he could go ahead and shave his mohawk off, come to work bald-headed the next day, or he could wait for it to grow back in. Well, Jim succumbed to peer pressure. No. What Jim succumbed to was the fact that he had bills needed paid, so he went ahead and shaved the rest of it off and came back to work the next day. The most humorous thing about this, though, was that 2 days later, there was a company-wide meeting called. We all had to meet at one of the other grocery stores. Every employee was responsible to be there. And the whole meeting was because of they were updating one line in the employee handbook. Yep, you guessed it. It now said that there were to be no extreme haircuts and that haircuts had to be off the collar and above the ear. Jim began to ask, what about people who had their uniform numbers carved into their head or had their initials carved into their head or other things carved into their haircuts? My store manager firmly placed his elbow in my ribs while Jim was asking the question, and so we went along with the change to the employee handbook. I know, not an exciting story, but Jim thought it was interesting that I can claim that because of me, the employee handbook had to be changed. And that, my friend, is the power of Mohawks.